Monday, November 14th, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today I have the pleasure of speaking with Claudio Grass. Some of you have asked me to interview Claudio. I have followed his writings and I've also watched some of his interviews in the past. And Claudio is a believer in sound money, sound society. So we're on the same wavelength. I think he works or he's a sponsor of the Mises Institute. Maybe you can clarify that, Claudio. And Claudio is also in Switzerland, which is where I happen to be at the moment, as many of you know. So Claudio, welcome to the channel.
Mario, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, so maybe you could give us a little bit of your background. I know you worked for the, didn't you work for the Swiss Red Cross or?
No.
A pilot, weren't you? Maybe you start there.
Okay, well, basically, I think, I started my career in the airline business. So I was an airline executive for 10 years during the 90s. And then, of course, with 9/11 and Enron, MCI, the dot-com bubble, basically there I realized I have no clue the world we are in. So I started, questioning, and I started to dig a bit deeper for the truth. Of course, I was reading mass media, so I became, a lefty in a way. I thought, the politicians are the good guys and all the managers are the bad guys. So based on that, I also decided to, I'm a Swiss officer, or, militia. We have a militia system over here. So basically I decided to go to the Middle East, join the United Nations, basically to do something good. That's what I had envisioned. And then, of course, it was perfect that I did it, because in these 2 years in the Middle East, I changed completely 180 degrees. I saw how international organizations are working. I realized that politics is always the problem, but never the solution. And I also took a few books along. Unfortunately, I started with Monetary History. It was a book written by Ferdinand Lips, Gold Wars.
Oh, I have that book too, yeah.
Okay, so Ferdinand was an amazing guy, so I got in touch.
He was from Zurich, wasn't it? He was
from Zurich, yeah. He was a Swiss private banker. And so I got in touch with him, and then he told me, Claudio, okay, read the classic liberals, start with Wilhelm Röpke, and then Friedrich August von Hayek, and Ludwig von Mises, and then, of course, it takes you a few months to become a classic liberal, and then it takes you a few weeks, to become an anarchist. In a positive sense, of course, I mean, anarchism means no rulers, but of course we have certain rules and orders which are coming from the culture itself. So, a true anarchist basically is, he does not need rulers, he understands that, because he's a self-sustainable, free-thinking individual. We are mature, we don't need guys telling us what to do and what to think. And so, yeah, and then I basically came back from the Middle East. I started buying gold back in 2004, when I think the price was around $320 or something. And it took me another few years to get into the physical precious metal business. It was not that easy, because over here in Switzerland, we are trained to become managers or employees. The whole Swiss system is not very much focused on entrepreneurship. So I in 2011, I was then able to join a precious metal company that was at the beginning, and I sort of built it up. I became the CEO. I stayed there for 6 years. And I think in 2017, I became independent. And since then, basically, I just advise customers from all over the world, but also, from Switzerland, how to buy, where to buy, how to store, especially Switzerland, Liechtenstein, which I still consider the best jurisdictions you can find. So, I mean, all my partners are, they basically build solutions together, which also function when the banking system goes bust.
Yeah.
So I think we are looking into the little details, which will make a difference in the future. And so that's what I'm still doing today. I just, I have the freedom and the liberty to do what I love to do. I love to write. I love to talk to people, help presentations, and so on. And so I can, and then basically I can refer those customers to the partners, or I come up with a tailor-made solution depending on the needs, on the specific needs of each customer.
Yeah, I see that you cover high net worth individuals, corporations, and retail. So all kinds of people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and and I recommend the viewers go to claudiograss.ch. That's his website. And I was going through the about, and under the silver lining, I'm going to quote you. You say, although it is impossible to determine when it will happen exactly, it should be obvious by now that the coming years, especially in the Western world, will be dominated by a declining real economy, higher unemployment rates, financial repression, measures such as higher taxation and government restrictions, interest rates which are kept artificially low are causing low or even negative real return on investments. In such an environment, gold is a high yield asset. And what I found interesting is your comment on the financial repression, because I've been in the UK for 30 years. I'm in Zurich just visiting, of course. And our situation in the UK in terms of government spending, taxation is going to get worse. And they are trying to keep interest rates suppressed. And we're going to see, I think it's in 3 days, the autumn statement, they call it, the budget, and it's going to really hurt. So have you got anything to say about that, like in terms of advice for people in the UK or any other country, how to try to avoid this financial repression as much as possible? Because I know unless you become a hermit and live, it's sometimes difficult to do it.
Well, honestly, I mean, I truly believe that we are standing at the crossroad. And people have, I mean, after these 2.5 years, I think, it should be obvious that our governments are just, insane, that politicians are basically a bunch of idiots and crooks. And that they are right now really destroying the system as we know it. It's based, of course, on it's a Western dominated system based on the US dollar as the world reserve currency, of course. But I think this is, we are back in the old war. I mean, we really, and we can see that East and West is being divided again. And Corona really was destroying mid-sized companies, small-sized companies, and now basically they're taking away the energy, blowing up pipelines. So to me, I mean, Morgenthau also tried to deindustrialize Germany after the Second World War. Of course, they understood in a way, if they come with a Marshall Plan, that they also need Germany to be prosperous so that they have a boom. But I think now we are back to that stage. I really would wonder if by the end of next year we still have, substantial German industrial companies alive. I think this year we'll see, what is going to happen during winter time. I mean, there's still some gas, the reserves are filled up, but I'm really expecting, that, I mean, yeah, next year will be, I mean, there is always cause and effect. And at the end of the day, we haven't been that productive over the last 2.5, 3 years. We destroyed this globalization, the global supply chains that we pushed since the middle of the 90s. And so I see it, for me, I mean, it's with Ukraine, for example, this wag the dog story, this Muppet show. To me, it's so absurd that I truly believe, I'm really focusing on the people who understand what's going on, people who are willing to, I always, when everything started with Corona, I said, Corona is the official invitation to leave the system because they will lock us out anyway. And I think that's also what happened in a way. But I think, there is a world economic crisis coming. So the avalanche has, we started an avalanche implicitly, 2.5, 3 years ago. But of course, when we look at all the financial data, the monetary injections, the trillions that we have injected into the system, it's just completely absurd. 1 trillion, I always say, because we lost a bit the measures, I always say 1 trillion seconds represents 31,709 years. And we basically injected, up to now, roughly 310 trillions, credit only. And then, of course, you have all the financial derivatives and so on. And, if it's possible to print wealth, then it might work. I don't believe that you can print wealth. And on the other side, it's never about the scarcity of money, because money is just a means to an end. And it's always about the scarcity of goods and services. That's why we need money to buy goods and services. And so this has been completely destroyed. Of course, everything takes time. But when you destroy somewhere in the whole system something, I mean, it has a huge impact. And so that's where we are now. I think it's really the Western world is falling apart. And we are back in the old Cold War again.
Yeah, and I think they're doing this just to keep us divided, because they know the system is unraveling. Could you go over a little bit, because you talk about that in your About Us, about how the Keynesians have destroyed the money, and why they do it?
I mean, Keynesian. It's really, I mean, we are back in a centrally planned system. I mean, and the guy who basically said that Keynes, that not Friedman was making the race, but Keynes and so on, that was Václav Klaus, the former president of the Czech Republic. I just did the interview with him. And I think, I think it's really, I mean, it's really over. I mean, it can take another 12, 18 months. I mean, the question is always, how much are the servants willing to suffer? And so I think it's important that, the revolution that we're going to see in the future, or that we are seeing right now already, is basically based on an individual level. Individuals who don't wait for a messiah or somebody that is going to help them or to save them. So it's really the individual that is saying, okay, it makes sense. I saw the system is not an option for me any longer. So I have to leave the banking system, which is definitely in the focus and will be destroyed in the future. So it definitely makes sense, to take money out of the banking system, put it into hard assets, which cannot be inflated or deflated away, or which are not then any longer also part of this system, which is financing war and bribing politicians and all that crap which is going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important that people should use now the time to look around, to travel around. If they're living in London City, or in Frankfurt or in New York or in LA, I mean, you don't want to be there when the supply chains really break down and famine. I mean, we're going to have food shortages in the future. And, there's always an old saying, there are 9 meals between order and chaos. And I think that's really the case. So I think it's important to travel around, to leave the densely populated areas, to leave the big cities, go a bit off grid, go and, try to find a nice municipality. What we are doing over here in Switzerland is, really we have, I think, 120, 130 groups by now, which understand that the world has changed, and that we now have basically to prepare for what is coming.
Yeah.
And so they are all, they're using the time to meet like-minded individuals, self-sustainable, enlightened people who understand, that they are not a means to an end. That we have freedom of speech, that we have freedom of choice, that private property needs to be respected. So I think, and then of course they are all highly productive. These are the people you really want to have around you, the makers. And so that's what we are doing. We have established a few municipalities already where we have people moving into certain villages. But of course, everyone has his own rhythm. Everyone has his own, family situation and so on. But I think it's important to take a step back, and really to think, to analyze the situation on an individual level, and then basically, just move ahead and prepare for a plan B if the system is no longer then going to function in the future.
And you advise people on precious metals, and how to acquire it, how to store it. Do you advise people as well on relocation and where maybe they could go in Switzerland or other countries?
I mean, I have a pretty good network, of course. So when it comes to Switzerland, because every state is different. So there is not one rule fits it all. I mean, so you need people who are focusing on relocation, tax advice, that kind of stuff. So I think I have people in my network who basically can offer those services. People I trust, people who are not vaccinated,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
and they don't.
I thought I wasn't going to be able to come back to Switzerland because I have family in Switzerland. Thankfully, the Swiss, they've dropped all those rules. But if I wanted to go to the US, I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I mean Switzerland. I mean, I'm not vaccinated. Never had a PCR test. I have been traveling. I never wear a muzzle. I think it's not a mask. It's a muzzle.
Yeah.
It's a sign of slavery. So yeah, I mean, I never had issues over here in Switzerland. I was also traveling all over Europe because I did at the beginning of Corona. I did a movie together with a friend. It's called Planet Lockdown Film.com. So we did, interviews at the beginning with Václav Klaus, Prince Michael of Liechtenstein. We had some senators.
I remember that. Liechtenstein is a really interesting place because, and I've always, I always liked Liechtenstein because I was into capitals of country, and I always ask people, "What's the capital of Liechtenstein?" No one knew it, and I'd say Vaduz,
Right.
But it's such a small country. But when I listened to you talk to that prince, he was really enlightened, I thought, and he was into the Austrian small government, and he talks about how the public services have to be like a private thing. They have to be efficient. And I was surprised how Liechtenstein, even though it's a small little country, it's actually decentralized.
Absolutely. I mean, Liechtenstein, for example, I mean, if a municipality wants to secede from Liechtenstein, they basically can do it. They have to raise 1,500 signatories, and then they can bring it in front of the people. And then the village basically can decide, yes, you want to leave or not. So, no, I mean, the Liechtenstein family, of course, they have been, their wealth has been confiscated several times in the past. So they know exactly what is happening, when collectivistic movements and totalitarian governments are coming and stealing what they can steal,
It's weird because, a lot of people criticize royalty or princes, but in this case, the Liechtensteins are actually, they seem to be enlightened.
Yeah, they also host, I mean, the Center for Austrian Economics. It's a European center, which is also in Liechtenstein. So overall, I mean, yeah, we are living in we still, I mean, the classic liberals. I mean, we have still some individuals over here, and the Swiss, because we grew up. We really have to return to those principles of subsidiarity. That Aristotle is even said, democracy can work, but on a very low scale. So, demos, the village, kratia, the rulers. So a democracy can work as long as you limit the power of the people, or, the wishes of the people, but also, of course, the power of the bureaucrats who are organizing something. But if you have 80 million, 100 million, then, I mean, then democracy is becoming, a wild beast, because then 51 is going to steal from the other 49%.
Yeah.
Next time A goes together with B to rob C, and so that's horrible. I mean, democracy really, I mean, under these circumstances, it motivates all the lowest vibes in people,
Yeah.
And that they truly believe that they can live.
Like Bastia said, it's the state is the fiction that people think that they can live, at the expense of everyone else.
Absolutely. And this is completely insane. But that's where we are, in the Western world. I mean, really have been.
Do you think Switzerland, for example, I know that in Switzerland, the communes, the local communities, and they're not commune in the sense of being communist, but like in the cantons, they're quite powerful. Do you think that helps Switzerland, that it's kind of decentralized and the federal government isn't as powerful?
Absolutely. absolutely. I mean, we have seen a concentration of power over the last 25 years as well, over here in Switzerland. You know, the International Monetary Fund, we joined them, I think, in 1997, then 2001, the United Nations, and then 2004, we had, you know, in the past, it was always, if a state, you know, if a state was doing a fine job, but they made some money on the side, you know, they basically were able to give it back to the people. But then in 2004, they came up, the centralized government came up saying that even the guys who spend too much money and the guys who are doing a fine job, saving money, that they basically have to take that money to finance, you know, the weak ones,
Yeah.
the ones who are spending too much. So, I mean, it has been also destruction of this federalistic system. And then, of course, the whole centralization of power, the redistribution. I mean, that's what has accelerated. We can see the outcome now, but we still, you know, I mean, I'm 51 years old, so we still have, you know, Swiss who, because up to the year 2000, you know, they even saw pictures when it comes to these politicians when they had this Muppet show every 4 years. You saw that in Germany or in other countries, but not in Switzerland, because politics was never so.
Yeah, I remember when I lived in Switzerland in the late 80s, early 90s, very few people knew who the president was.
Absolutely, because we have 7, of course, in a way.
Yeah. And but what do you think about what happened when the Americans basically forced the Swiss National Bank to get rid of half their gold and go off like a gold backing? Do you think that created a bit of, because I remember when I lived in Switzerland, there wasn't the speculation, and real estate was quite stable. And I think it's turned Switzerland more and more into like the debt-based, into a debt-based system.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you know, I mean, it just, you know, we can look at the central bank of Switzerland, the SNB. Today, it's a hedge fund. It's not a central bank. You know, I mean, they up to 2007, they stood at roughly 50 billion at the balance sheet of the SNB, and they made it up to 1,000 over the last since 2007. And now, of course, we had a correction year to date. I think 140 billion, the biggest loss ever. So yeah, it's a game, you know, and
that's why, I guess that's why you've been buying gold and silver, because all the central banks are doing what I mean, the SNB, they bought tech stocks, didn't they?
Absolutely, they bought, you know, they have well, they even have some gold mines. I mean, but they also have, you know, the military industrial complex. They have Facebook.
So what about, you know, because a lot of people, when they think of Switzerland now, unfortunately, they think of the World Economic Forum, they think of the BIS, and it's ironic that those institutions are in Switzerland. How do you explain that? I'm not like having a go at Switzerland, but is it because Switzerland has always been very stable for those people to put those institutions there? And do you think the Swiss people are waking up to the fact that they're not good institutions?
Absolutely. No, I think, you know, those, I mean, Switzerland was an armed neutral country. Since the Westphalian freedom, basically, we have been given, you know, this status. Interestingly, you know, that we received that status has been the fact that, you know, Switzerland, we used to sell, we had nothing, you know, we had no raw materials in the ground, 4 different languages. You know, we never qualified as a typical nation. Switzerland has always been called a nation defined by its own will, because of the 4 languages, different ethnicities, and so on. And so we basically sold roughly 1.6 million mercenaries from the 14th, you know, to the 17th, 18th century. So we had the most brutal, but also mercenaries who stick to their word, you know. And at the same time, because we had, let's say, the French, they had from time to time, they had 30,000-40,000 Swiss under as their special guard, for example, the king in France, and so on. And one of the rules that Swiss were selling those mercenaries, one of the rules has been, whenever Switzerland is under attack, it wasn't called Switzerland, it was, you know, the Tagsatzung, that we have the right to withdraw all the troops. So of course, you know, all these emperors surrounding us, they thought, hey, listen, let's Switzerland be the place to be. I mean, there's not too much to, you know, no precious metals, nothing in the ground. So make sure that we keep the Swiss as our protection. And so I think that led to this special status of Switzerland, you know, this armed neutrality. And of course, because we always had, you know, everything was based on the principle of subsidiarity, so bottom up. We had 7 presidents, not only one, you know, so this division of power that has always been pretty good given. And I think because no one was interested in politics, because the Swiss we are traders, you know, we love to trade. We have a highly professional industry, you know, very, very specialized also, high class stuff. And so, I mean, all those organizations, at least that's my understanding, they came to Switzerland because even these bad guys, they want to have a neutral country where they, you know, where there's no strong state, there is no strong secret service and that kind of stuff. And at the same time, yeah, I mean, they also need a place where they conspire against humanity. And, you know, Switzerland was always, yeah, because we never felt, you know, we never, even today, I mean, the Swiss are pretty naive when it comes to the Swiss government, just because we had such a weak government over the past. And now, of course, the last few years has changed a lot in the perspective of a lot of people. So I think there is, yeah, the reason is not that we are somehow the belly of the beast, or that we are somehow involved with all those sociopaths. I think the reason was really just it was a neutral nation, weak government, weak centralized structures. So it gave also a lot of freedom to the crooks. You know, you can always abuse freedom, of course.
Yeah, and also, ironically, the Swiss protect up until recently, bank secrecy, private property, which is a good thing in my opinion, was really important, and in a way that helped these guys to come, because, you know, the Swiss respect that.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, the US, I mean, Wegelin, when basically there was the oldest private bank who had to shut down.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, and the message was, you know, if you don't comply with American rule or the empire, and then you're not going to have access to US dollars, so we're going to kick you out of the SWIFT system. So of course, if you're a bank, you're done. So so to me, of course, you know, the whole banking system in general is, I mean, it's you know, it's not, it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you know, if you're with UBS or Credit Suisse, I mean, they are both also more an American bank these days.
Yeah.
They have primary dealer status from the Federal Reserve since the year 2000 when they took over first Boston and Warburg and all that kind. So
someone told me, a friend of mine in Germany, I was talking to him the other day, and he mentioned a Wegelin Bank, and I hadn't heard about it. And I looked up, so for the viewers, Wegelin Bank was a private bank up until a few years ago in Switzerland, and a lot of Americans had put money with that bank, and they didn't pay tax because it was offshore. And I think the U.S. Treasury threatened and fined them for, you know, for a US rule. So yeah, so
yeah, I mean, the guy with Wegelin, I mean, UBS had a lot of undeclared funds.
I think it's because they were a small bank, so it's easier to go after a small bank.
So Wegelin basically, I mean, what they did, they were basically taking over a lot of US customers from UBS, and they thought we are protected under Swiss law because the customer is coming from a Swiss bank and so on. And so that's where they made the discalculation.
Okay. Yeah, Claudio, could you tell the viewers where they can go and to, you know, to see what you can do for them, or kind of service you can provide, your website, and what, you know.
Sure. I mean, the easiest, I think, is really, you know, you go on my webpage, claudiograss.ch. There you find the informations, also the way I think, you know, or which people have influenced me the most. And then, of course, I run a blog where I publish roughly 4 articles per month about geopolitics, about philosophy, of course, about Marxism, which is a topic now, or neo-Marxism, of course. you know, I can be reached by email.
Yeah.
People can call me. So usually, I mean, when I receive an email, if people have questions, I mean, they can just formulate their question, and I definitely will come back.
Yeah.
And if someone is interested in my services, yeah, feel free. You know,
Yeah.
I'm happy to serve.
Yeah, and just one more question. It's a tough question, but I need to ask you, do you think the current system could collapse, and that would maybe wake people up to the fact that we're not free, and that we should go back to some kind of sound money and sound society with small government? How hopeful are you that that could happen, or do you think we should just stick to uh, being self-reliant and independent?
No, I think there's a great awakening taking place. I mean, not only in Switzerland, all over the world. And because I have so many customers from all over the world, and they called me up because I also pushed, you know, kind of plan B over here in Switzerland. And so people were calling me up saying, hey, we do exactly the same. So of course, you know, the majority will realize what's going on when it's too late. I mean, they are now too lazy to think for themselves, you know, so what can we do? But I'm positive. I'm definitely positive. But I think, you know, we're going to have some hard years, because it's really, you know, what they do with Europe and also the States. I mean, it's quite shocking.
Yeah,
If you really think.
affects everyone, even Switzerland.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think we have a few years in front of us. On the other side, I truly believe, you know, that the internet will remain. And of course, the internet also has, every coin has two sides. So what we have seen when it comes to the internet, you know, the centralized side, which is enslaving the individual and not freeing the individual. But we have, you know, a lot of tech companies, crypto anarchists still, which are, you know, focusing on decentralized peer-to-peer software. And I truly believe, you know, we will be connected. The internet will be around. So even we're going to have free areas all over the world. I think this is really the end of the nation state, you know, because if you want to believe the World Economic Forum, it's the end of the nation state, you know. And I think on the other side, yeah, we have two possibilities. Either we go central, which would be, you know, the belly of the beast and not the thing we should do, or we go decentralized. And so I made my choice, and together with some other people, and I think the decentralized ones, yeah, I mean, we cannot change the world. I don't know. I never went through a world economic crisis, you know, and also for me, it's the first time. But we can read what happened in history. And when I see those sleepwalkers, you know, like the guys before the First World War, I mean, so we see some people sleepwalking even today. But at the same time, I'm surprised to see how many individuals really realized, you know, it was too much. Corona was also too much. And so there is always, you know, action, reaction. And I think because we just see all this mainstream propaganda, which is absolutely absurd and really, I mean, it's a scam. We always have to feel that we are alone or that we are a minority and so on. And I think that's not true, you know. So we have just to network and keep the faith, you know, that man is a reasonable being, that he has, you know, that he can use his own mind. And so we just have to do a kind of re-enlightenment, you know, go back to these old principles, Immanuel Kant. And yeah, and then I think we don't know, nobody knows exactly what's coming out of it. You know, I don't see total surveillance and all these stuff, all these certificates and you know, this trace and tracking. I don't see it coming, because first we have to crash.
I agree with you about, you know, because in 2020, 21, the way the mainstream was talking about it was, if everything, you know, you wouldn't be able to do anything, but they had to backtrack. So there is hope for that, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think people will realize that we don't need rulers.
No,
that must be really the
well, that's
election.
the definition of anarchy, is without a ruler. It's a Greek word.
Absolutely.
So with that, Claudio, I'm going to thank you for coming on the channel. Hopefully we'll keep in touch, because as you say, you know, you need to try to educate people so they are aware of these things.
Hey, thank you very much, Mario. It was nice talking to you.
You're welcome. It was nice talking to you as well.